Ruby Rose is apparently a rapper turned OF model. I think that word model is a stretch in any meaningful sense, but rapper turned OF model. And it came out that this gentleman right here, who's a crypto bro, just completely jumped out the window and dropped over 60K on her OF and met her in real life. And then upon meeting her in real life, I think she gave him her number, and then he proceeded to text her a bunch of crazy stuff. And so everybody's been dragging this dude, okay? Everybody's been dragging this dude. And the dude is a weirdo. He was on a TV show back in the day on MTV about being addicted to corn, okay? So this gentleman right here. And apparently he, I guess, made it big with crypto. So this is Poetic Flacco. He covered this, and he brought up a very interesting point about this story that I haven't heard anybody cover, but I think makes the entire industry of OF, the entire industry of the webcam modeling, just as complicit as this dude who is completely simping off and spending over $100,000. All right. So another creator calls them only fools creators. Yeah, I guess. Okay, so check this out.
Brandon is a victim to OF and Ruby Rose's romance scam. And here's what I mean. Ruby Rose is a high-earning OF creator who is signed to an OF agency. And one of the perks of an OF agency is fan interactions.
Andrew Tate and his brother said that they took advantage of desperate men on OF by posing as the models they were interacting with. And I think they said they got one dude for $800,000. You guys, I don't know if you ever remember that, right? So remember, they were managing webcam girls, and then they would sit on the other side. They would give the girl a fake keyboard that wasn't plugged in, and they would sit on the other side, and they would pretend to be these women talking to these rich men. Okay, first of all, that's a little sus, if you ask me.
Darkness.
Okay, pretending to be a dude pretending to be a girl to get money out of another dude. Pretty dark. But that's what Andrew Tate and them did, okay? Now, that has been leveled up to the point where now it's AI doing it, apparently. And so in these OF model agencies, they're running the back end because OF apparently doesn't work through subscriptions. Like if you guys partner with us on Patreon, which we should be partnering with us on Patreon. There's all kinds of exclusive stuff. The Tyrese interview is about to drop on there early, right? If you partner with us on Patreon, that money goes directly to us, and that helps us keep the light on and not be dependent on AdSense, which you want us to not be dependent on YouTube AdSense, trust me. On OF, it's not just a subscription that where the money's at. Apparently, it's in the messaging, and when you message these people, you then pay to message with them, and you, I guess, get exclusive content through private messaging, apparently. Now, this is where this takes a really, really dark turn.
The OF agency will take over the OF creators' DMs, and their job will be building connections with fans, and they will handle DM to foster engagement and maximize tips and increase the average payment per fan through Flirt Flow.
Now, Poetic Flacco is going to unpack exactly what this is, okay? They're going to unpack exactly what this means. And I promise you, this takes the entire addiction aspect of this to a whole nother level. If you are dabbling in corn and if you are dabbling in specifically webcam stuff, like you need to be really careful. Like get off of corn, and if you're anywhere near webcam stuff, get off that stuff because it is dangerous because of what's about to come and what's already happening. Okay?
In the case of Ruby Rose, it was the OF agency who was DMing Brandon and weaseling $60,000 to $90,000 out of Brandon. And here's how they did it. You see, they have a sophisticated AI bot called Flirt Flow. Now, the AI bot doesn't just send messages, according to them, no. It creates an authentic connection, meaning the bot is programmed to have an expertise in relationship building.
This is a sickness of the highest order.
Who created this, and why would you want this to be created? Who created this? This is awful. So you already got men who are sick. They're addicted to corn to the point where they're spending a lot of money on it. Then they're spending money on talking to these girls that they think are girls, but are actually AI bots.
So the bot pretty much have the psychology or the knowledge of like a 35-year-old psychology doctorate. And this bot is able to evoke emotion out of these vulnerable men. The bot is able to convince these men that you care about them. is convince these men that they're in a relationship with you. It convinced these men that y'all are working towards something much greater than just the OnlyFans DMs. The bot is essentially a bot that's programmed to manipulate vulnerable men out of their money through a romance scam because these men think they're in a full-blown relationship with these OF creators, which is why in the messages to Ruby Rose, Brandon is telling her, I invested a lot of money into this relationship. I thought we had a genuine connection. You don't love me anymore? That's because the AI bot convinced Brandon that Ruby Rose was in love with him.
So this dude, Brandon, ends up just sending her a dissertation of text messages, threatening self-deletion if she doesn't respond to him, offering her hundreds of thousands of dollars just to send him a text back. Why? Because when he was talking to her on OnlyFans, it was a bot, and he thought he had a real relationship with this creator. But then when he met her in real life, she had no idea who he was. He just showed her that he was her number one supporter.
It's a romance scam, but it's just legal. But it's wrong. And it's crazy how creators like myself are looked at as crazy when we bring up how unethical this is. How unethical it is to use AI bots to manipulate and coerce vulnerable, mentally ill men like Brandon who are addicts into giving away exorbitant amount of money to these OF creators. But somehow we're all for protecting addicts until it comes to incels and vulnerable men who have addictions to corn. You see, the cigarette company got nerfed. Like, the cigarette companies got restrictions and laws and regulations in terms of advertising, in terms of fruity flavors, because the government realized that people were addicts. And it was unfair to have the predatory cigarette companies essentially do whatever they got to do to get more people hooked on their product. Why aren't there any rules and regulations for men like Brandon on OF?
A percentage of you guys probably dabble in this OnlyFans instant messaging stuff. I know people who were Christians, professed Christians, who were struggling and their entire lives were in financial ruins because of this OnlyFans stuff. This is before it was OnlyFans. It was these parasocial relationships with cam girls, or so they thought. So one, I know there are people here that are engaging in this stuff. Just statistically speaking, they're looking at corn and potentially engaging with webcam. Two, the financial ramifications of engaging with webcams. And three, I'm warning you guys, if there's ever been a time to quit corn, if there's ever been a time to get off of this stuff, now would be the time, because it's only going to become more and more and more and more sophisticated. And so you could say these men aren't vulnerable. These men aren't it's their fault. Okay, how do you think people get to the place of doing drugs? How do you think people get to the place of being addicted to corn? It's oftentimes their decision, but it's also some degree of insecurity or trauma or lack of social skills, or oftentimes, in my case, actual molestation as a kid that drove me down a very dark path and took me decades to get free of it. Right? And so, yeah, I mean, you're totally spot on. We talked about that earlier, right? You think you're talking to a hottie, talking to Top G himself. Well, in this case, you're talking to a robot that you think you're in a relationship with. And so this dude ends up spending close to $100,000. And yeah, we could laugh and be like, ha, 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 he got played. It's his fault. Okay, sure, to some degree it is his fault. But I'm telling you, your nephews, I'm telling you, your friends, I'm telling you, some of your guys' husbands are liable to get sucked into this if we're not careful and we're not warning men about this. Get off of this stuff. Get off of this stuff. Get off of this stuff. And please, the scriptures specifically, when it comes to sexual immorality, tell us to flee. And if you can't have, you know, this culture of like selective empathy and selective nuance is so weird. It's so weird that we would be empathetic to the prostitute, but we wouldn't be empathetic to the John who's putting money in the prostitute's hands. And by in this context, I'm talking about the OnlyFans. Like, that's such a bizarre thing to me. Like, you would be empathetic and see the nuance in the girl that's a prostitute, or in right, or the girl that was a thought that was for the streets, but you don't see any nuance to the broken dude that maybe has never had a relationship and his only outlet because he doesn't know social skills, because maybe he's on a spectrum, his only outlet to any type of pleasure has been through this sort of stuff. Like, the selective empathy and the selective nuance is so weird to me. But at the end of the day, people are being hurt. Like, sin is going to hurt people. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Whether that's the incel dude who's now a crypto millionaire and squandering his money, or just the average dude that's working a Joe job that now is spending hundreds of dollars, and this becomes a form of this compulsion where he can't stop, right? Or the girl that's being like, sexual sin is dangerous. And so like, let's not be people where we can't extend empathy or extend nuance to folks in our out group. Because y'all just dismiss these dudes and be like, they're gross and they're perverts. It's like, okay. And there's women who are creating this entire industry, right? Like, we can't do that. We can't do this selective outrage thing. Like, we can't do this selective nuance thing. We can't do this selective empathy thing. Like, if you're going to be empathetic, like, you got to understand that there are dudes who struggle with this. And if they're not careful, they can go from casually looking at free corn to jumping all the way in the deep end and potentially ruining their lives dabbling in this stuff. What you think is innocent can spin out of control really quickly. And one of my pastors always used to tell me, you can choose the sin, but you cannot choose the consequence. You can choose the sin, but you cannot choose the consequence. You could choose the sin of licking a corn and then clicking into a webcam thing, and then before you know it, you're DMing with somebody, and now it costs money to DM, and then before you know it, you think you're in a relationship with this webcam model, and then and you're made to feel special, and then before you know it, you're out thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. We see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask Him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately helped me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when He answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used from my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.